Well, good afternoon, guys. This is Matt McCauley from the Aftercare Podcast. We're trying to figure out a new name because so many people have a Matt chat. So many of you who've watched me in the past or listened to some of our CDs, you know we're upgrading in terms of trying to do something where you can get it on your phone. So we're trying really hard to work out something where we can just text you the podcast for the month. I want to send out about once a month. And instead of sending the old school CDs out to you in the mail like we used to, we're just going to be able to, you'll log on. Most of you had a cell phone that will allow you to log on, and we'll send you the link, and that should work out. We're really working on a good name for the podcast. Would like to send you something every month, you guys that are out, or if you're family members of people that are inside the prison system, you've never been to prison, don't know anything about prison, but you got a family member in prison. We're trying to really reach out to guys. We've got about 23, 24 years of prison ministry as a volunteer chaplain in the state of North Carolina, now up here in Virginia. So hopefully that will work out well. But if you guys will keep praying for me, we'll find something where we can call it a pretty good name. And I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to thank also Eugene McCurdy for helping me out over here in the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of Galax, Virginia, which is above my home now in North Carolina, just right across the line. And so I want to thank him, and all his tech equipment is so much better than what we had before. Even though we have a camera and a tripod, things like that, it's difficult for me to do tech. So we'll get there, guys. But right now, I just want to let you know we love you. We appreciate all of you who are on the outside making it work, getting after it every day, making it work. Going to work every day. Some of you have gotten married. Some of you, I've done one of your marriages, Otis Quick, and he's still making it work. None of you who I'm in contact with have returned to prison. None of you have reoffended, hopefully, and got back into the court system. So I want to see you go the rest of your life, not only staying out of trouble, but also doing something for God, getting out there, making it happen, getting involved in some kind of ministry in some way or another. Lots of you are already doing that, and we're very proud. I want to let you know a little bit about me. I hadn't seen you. I've been off the grid for the past 4 months or so as far as sending anything out to you other than the ones we try to talk to and text and speak to on a regular basis. But I got my transfer. Many of you know I've been a magistrate here in the state of North Carolina for 26 years. This is my 26th year. We had 4 years before that as a parole officer. So we were getting ready to retire, thinking about coming up. My wife really wanted to come up here and live in this area. So we were able to get worked out with her getting a job and bought a house and all that good stuff. And I was wondering, what about me? Where's my place in life? Well, I guess I'll just have to retire and go find something to do. And we tried to get a transfer up here last year, 2023. Things didn't work out. They kicked it out. But this time, around February of this year, I think most of you may know, but if you're not, it's a great story to listen to. But they just, evidently somebody didn't apply that they wanted, whatever the case may be, and they decided to take my 26 years experience and not just hire somebody new. So, hey, we're great, and got transferred up here to Surrey County, North Carolina, Dobson, and so doing great at it. Thank God for the transfer. I can keep working as long as they'll let me work. You always need to have that attitude. As long as the powers that be let me have a job and God's uses in, hey, I'm in good right now. So we've been up here now, reunited with my wife, not having to live with my mother-in-law anymore. I guess some of you know how I've got a great mother-in-law, but it's always better to be with the wife than the mother-in-law and father-in-law and in-laws and strange people coming in and living in somebody else's house. So now we got our own house over in Ennis, North Carolina. So we're just enjoying life. And so we want to hope the same, that God will let you have a season where things will work out for you as well. And so I'm glad to be up here, glad to be a part of what God is doing in the earth. We're being used now as a chaplain in the state of Virginia prison system. So they allow me, being a magistrate, you can't be preaching in the jail where you just lock somebody up. You know how that's just really not good. It's kind of a conflict of interest. A lot of inmates, you guys know former inmates, a lot of guys use the courts or somebody in my position. They'll try to use it to say, hey, can you write a letter, get me out? Can you lower my bail, whatever the case. So we try to stay away from the district that we're working in, as you have known, back in North Carolina. And so we've tried to come up here in Virginia and in a whole new state, but right across the line, because we're on the top of North Carolina, as you know. And so we go to River North prison in Independence, Virginia, every Friday that we're available. They only have it as a level 1 prison, guys. Y'all know what it means when you're in level 1. If you're in Virginia, if you're listening to this and you have or family that's in the Virginia prison, but North Carolina, it would be like a high risk, they call it, where a brown clothes felon. Basically, you're locked down most of the time. You can't work inside unless you're like at Caledonia. Many of you know me from back at Caledonia. So we're over here. Only time we can go in the morning is on Friday morning for 2 hours. But we've met some connections, and we hope to be branching out into other regional jails up here or prison systems up here in Bland. I think they said there's one, and I think Marion, Virginia, they have one. And so I'm looking forward to getting involved in that. Hopefully, I'm 54 now, guys. I've been knowing many of you since I started doing this at 30. And so hopefully we'll be going into this as long as the Lord will let us work in the work. So hopefully we got a good for another 100,000 miles at least anyway. But today I want to lead you some thoughts that's been on my heart. I think the last time we talked about Samson, that's kind of still in my spirit. I just want to talk to you today about getting your hands on it. If you can just get your hands on something working for you in life, if God can just use you, there's no telling where you'll go. And so I'm going to read in the scripture from the book of Judges, chapter 16, verse 23. I'm reading out the King James Version. I've got several different versions of the Bible, but this is what I keep in my truck. So I grabbed the Bible when I came up here today. And so it said, then the lords of the Philistines gathered together to offer a great sacrifice unto Dagon their God and to rejoice. For they said, our God, speaking of Dagon, has delivered Samson, our enemy, into our hand. And the people saw him and they praised their God. And they said, our God has delivered us into the hands of our enemy and the destroyer of our country and slew many of us. And it came to pass when their hearts were merry, basically they were getting drunk, it sounds like. They said, call for Samson that he may make us sport, or they wanted to have a laughing stock, so to speak. And they called for Samson out of the prison that he made them sport and set them between the pillars of the temple. And Samson said to the lad or the small boy that held him by the hand, so they wanted to just exploit him and make him out, just parade him through this great big strong man, bodybuilder, whatever the case may be. The Bible said people were amazed at his strength. So he probably wasn't that big a guy, but he was extremely used of God when it came time to be used. And so they got this small kid leading him out, and he's blind where they put out his eyes, and they're just, just trying to make him look foolish. And so Samson said unto the boy, suffer me that I may feel the pillars where the house standeth, that I may lean upon them. Verse 27, and the house was full of men and women, and all the lords of the Philistines were there. And there were upon the roof about 3,000 men and women, which beheld while Samson made sport. And Samson called unto the Lord and said, Lord God, remember me, I pray, and strengthen me, I pray, only this once, that I may be avenged of the Philistines for my 2 eyes. And 29, verse 29, and Samson took hold of the 2 middle pillars upon which the house stood, and on which it was borne up, on the one on the right hand and one on the left. And Samson said, let me die with the Philistines. And he bowed himself with all of his might, and the house fell upon the lords and upon the people that was therein, so that the dead which he slew at his death were more than they slew in his life. And so what I was thinking about this scripture, and I'd listened to preachers over the years, guys, saying, comparing this, but I thought about that. If you can just get your Samson was basically a failure at that point of life. He let things get in his way. Delilah, lust for women, things of that nature. All things that I fight and you fight will all fall into 3 categories. The lust of the flesh, like Jesus said, the lust of the eye, or the pride of life. And so Samson had problems, and he was a great deliverer for that country, could have been used and lived out a long life and had peace because he was so much stronger. There could have been so much of a greater thing, but he let things get to him, let secret sin get to his life. And you know the stories of how he was in Delilah's barbershop, beauty shop, whatever you call it, and he sold out his strength. And next thing you know, the Bible said the Philistines paid her a good sum of money. They say everybody has a price, the mafia way, they say everybody's got a price. So they sold out Samson. And next thing you know, the Bible said they took him. Things that were used to being taken control of, he was taking control of, took him. Said they put out his eyes, and he did go to the prison and he was in there going, the Bible said, blind, bound, and he was grinding, going around and around, grinding grain at the prison, and constantly just around and around. Many of you have been there. If you've been in prison, many of you have been there in life. You're just going around the mountain over and over and over. No change, no victory, just the same thing every week, every day. And one day, the Bible said that Samson, it said, howbeit. That's an old King James version. Basically, it's meaning something like suddenly or over time, Samson's hair began to grow back. So God was proving that he was still with Samson. I think Samson probably looked at the times that he walked off with the gates of the city and just walked out. I'm probably thinking about the times, I'm looking at him grinding grain and things like that, guys. He's probably thinking about the times where he was able to set foxes' tails on fire and use them as a terrorist weapon through the fields of the Philistines. Basically, he attacked the entire economy of the Philistines. And so he had great victory, took a jawbone of a donkey and slew 1,000 men. I mean, these were great feats of strength and victory where Samson was used, and now he knows no sight. He has no vision. He has nothing going for him. But the Bible said the very thing that was used was his hair. His strength starts coming back. So the thing he's pushing around, this huge grain mill, whatever the case is, this huge piece of equipment that he's pushing around, it's not as heavy as it used to be. And the sweat coming off his head is not running down as fast as it used to run down because he's got hair coming back. He's starting to feel his strength coming back. And so the Bible said, when they came to make fun of him, he said, if I could just get my hands on something. And I'm thinking about you. If you can just get your hands on something, the enemy thinks you're gone. The devil thinks that you're sold down the river. Maybe you're out of prison and you just can't quite get there on a job because you got to tell the truth. Every time you go to an unemployment agency, they had to put down that I was a felon. Now, some of you guys are former sex offenders, and I've had some talks with you over the years, and it's almost like you're labeled for life. In the state of North Carolina, anyway, it's like you're labeled. You got to fight that much harder. But there's coming a day, my friend, if you can just get your hands on something, if you can just get your hands on the pillars of the temple. You may be older now, but you're going to be able to kill more devils, so to speak, or Philistines, or take more victory in the end of your life than you have all throughout the course of your life. So I'm believing you've made a commitment for Christ. Many of you in our meetings and in prison over time. Now it's time. Some of you are out now. I think we got about 25, 30 guys that listen or keep up with us on a regular basis. Now it's time for you to get your hands on something that's going to work for you. And I'm absolutely believing that things are going to happen. The thing I like about this is God used situations and circumstances to work in his favor. It wasn't enough to put Samson and put out his eyes. The devil had to put him in the prison house, and not just take him prisoner, but put out his eyes and take him and put him in this prison and grinding grain. But that wasn't enough. The enemy, the devil, is a bully. And so he wanted to just use him, but he overplayed his deck. The Bible said the circumstances began to work out, and they said, let us make sport of Samson. So circumstances started coming for him in his life. They're having this big arena. They're saying, hey, man, we've got the beer out there, man. We've got the Coors Light. We've got the wine. We've got, all kinds of food. Let's bring out the champion of the enemy and just put him out here and laugh at him. And so that's one circumstance that began to work. And God started using things to get Samson to the temple. And then the Bible talks about using a small boy. You don't ever know what kind of small hinges or little hinges in life open big doors. And so this small kid takes Samson by the hand. I hope he told him, hey, man, you better move on and get out of here just as quick as you can, because this place is about to shake with my strength. But whatever the case, Samson, that kid was used to lead Samson up there. And you don't know who God may use to lead you to the place where you need to get on the outside. You never know what might happen. And I just like to tell you just a couple of stories that I've been thinking about over time. I think about Jensen Franklin, one of my favorite preachers on television. You guys have watched some of his DVDs and videos we brought in to the prison over the years, and we've seen Jensen. My wife loves to watch him on television, but what a lot of you may not know is Jensen Franklin, known all over the world, pastoring church in Gainesville, Georgia, and all these other churches, campuses they call them now. The churches now are into these campuses and building different places, some of them across other states, some of them in just other cities. But yet Jensen Franklin has got all this going on. But his dad used to pastor our church in Eastern North Carolina in a church of less than 100 people. And Jensen and his brothers and sisters were right there. It's like the Jackson 5. They had 5 kids. Everybody played a musical instrument. His dad was named, they called him back then, I'm from the old school, the Church of God. They called him Brother Billy Franklin. Billy could preach. His wife, Katie, played the organ, and all of those kids, Jensen included, every one of them had to play drums, an instrument, something like that. They were all involved. They stuck in that church, and that church was taking off. Things were going great. And then, as you know, many times the pastor may have a vision. Some of the people in the church may not have the same vision that the pastor has. And so there was some conflict in the church. I remember I'm a lot younger, or a few years younger than Jensen is. Next thing you know, you see they're moving his dad out of there, taking a vote, whatever the case. But his dad had ended up moving with his family to Gastonia, North Carolina, and up under Charlotte. And so here's this great opportunity. They wanted to build a church and do a greater work in that area. They had some people that were stuck in the past and didn't want that. And next thing you know, you had all this sorrow and hurt. My mother was involved on the side of him and his family and things of that nature. And so I can remember how my mom, I heard Jensen Franklin talking about this. I don't think he would recognize me now after all these years, but he knows my mother. So I was listening to him last year on national television talking about how 4 ladies, when he had this terrible thing in the church that went down, 4 ladies in the church would get together and they would pray and fast for him all day long on Saturday because they believed that Jensen had a ministry. Even he was a young kid at that time, probably 12, 13 years old, but they could recognize the Spirit's anointing on his life. And so there came this huge setback. Yeah, they lost the church and they had to move to a new city. But, Jensen could have stayed down, man. He could have stayed and said, if this is church, I don't want no part of it. It is just being around Christian, quote unquote, Christian people. I don't want to be a part of it. Yet Jensen used that gift. And he was thanking my mom and other ladies on television, that my mom used to pray with. Her name was Pam McCauley. And just thanking them on national TV thank you for praying for me all those years. And Jensen picked up the mantle. He started preaching when he got older, went to school, put the past behind him. He's starting to get on the map, so to speak, preaching as an evangelist. Then he came through a small church in Gainesville, Georgia. While he was in revival, the pastor died, and the people asked Jensen, so the story is told from Jensen, from hearing him. He said, hey, we need you to pastor this church. And Jensen's fasting. He was a real believer in fasting and prayer and getting the direction of God. And so he said that the Spirit began to show him, hey, they're like sheep without a shepherd. You need to stay here. And end of evangelistic style ministry and traveling itinerant style and stay here and pastor this church. Well, Jensen followed the Lord. They started praying and seeking the Lord and really getting down to it. They started developing techniques that grew the church. Next thing you know, they grew, got on television. Then he had opportunities to get on TBN. Some of y'all remember the old days. The next thing you know, he's just on the map, and it grew and grew, and the campuses grew. His family began to get prospered, and now you see him every week, and it's like a household name in the Christian world. But he could have stayed and just grinded on that meal. He could have stayed in the prison, so to speak. And that's a lot of you guys, man. You got to pick up that mantle. You got to pick up, when you get that opportunity to go in life, you got to believe God's got something for you. He got his hands on something because somebody was praying for him. He got his hands on something because he used that gift that God gave him. He had a tremendous gift to play the saxophone and music. I think he had a degree in music, and he used that, but his real gift was preaching. He didn't have a degree in preaching, but God was able to use him, give him messages, and now it's reached lots of people across the world, and God wants to use you, my friend. I don't care what you have done in the past, what you have been convicted of, if you are guilty or innocent, whatever the case, if you had to serve time. I got one of my best guys that's out, and he knows who he is, listening to this. Man, the guy was framed. I mean, he got something, and somebody said something, somebody told something. He's locked up. The guy had a job with Sprint, working with computers, and come home one day and there's the police waiting for him to talk to him and interview him. So you have all kinds of things, but you got to put the past. You cannot stay grinding, moving on that wheel. You got to get to the Dagon's temple, so to speak. And I'm not telling you to go commit suicide. I don't want you to read that wrong, but I'm just saying God's got some things for you to do in the end of your life, in the latter years while you're out, that's going to be greater than what you ever done in the past. And that guy has started to own it. And when I had to leave, his name's Tim. He started to step out and move out. And now he's taking care of the aftercare ministry that I can't do. We're trying to eat with guys for lunch most Sundays. I can't do that anymore. I'm up here in the state of the other side of the state now, but he's taking that thing and trying to follow up. We got a budget for him that he can use back home. And so, I mean, I just appreciate so much what he's doing to own it. And so that's somebody that God is using, and God's going to use you in your life as well. I remember my life. I've told y'all this many times. Some of you may be listening that may not know me. Some of you may be family members of somebody in the prison system, because we're going to try to announce, if you want to hear this, one day, this may be a couple of months down the road, if you want to log on to whatever we go to and hear me on this podcast. Some of you hadn't done a thing wrong. Your family member went to prison, but you're thinking, how do I make it? How does this help me out? How do I get my hands on something? What I can remember in life, I've never been to prison, but I felt like, hey man, that's something I can do. I can relate to people that's locked up in life, because I sure have done my share of locking people up, but I feel for them. I feel like God has something for their life other than just to stay in jail the rest of their life. And so I remember throughout life how I had failed out in the police academy back in 1997, back in Eastern North Carolina, had a knee injury and was going to roll back through, and that didn't work out. And here I am with a degree and experience loading Pepsi trucks all night long, sweating on concrete. I was so thankful for Gatorade guys. Ladies and gentlemen, I guess it might be some women listening too, but I was so thankful that they had a bucket of Gatorade on the docks that we could could drink some. And I just remember what a difficult time that is. And then I went to straightening stop signs and landscaping with the state department and or the state highway department. And I remember those hot days and those summers, and I thought, man, if I could just get my hands on something, if I could just get back in my field, if I could just get back into what I'm doing. But I had to get to the point that I said, God, I'm here. I feel like my hair's going back. I feel like something's happening for me, but I got to get to the place in life where you want me. And I'm just going to submit to your will. And, I remember, I'll never forget the day in December 21st, 1998, the clerk of court called me. I remember I've told y'all this story many times, but there may be some new listeners, or maybe you need to hear this. But I remember I was at my wit's end. I said, Lord, if I never get out of here, what's going to happen? Am I going to stay on poverty level the rest of my life? What's going to take place? She called up and said, Matt, I got 2 magistrates at the end of the year that are going to retire, which is 10 more days. I need you. God began to speak to me this morning. And her name was Rachel Joyner. She was one of the 4 ladies that prayed for Jensen Franklin. Thank God she prayed a few prayers for me in the process. And God told her, said, hey, let Matt take that magistrate job. Call Pam McCauley's son, Matt, and tell him the job's his if he wants it. So I went from, sitting on a bucket picking weeds on Main Street or in Sunset Avenue, Rocky Mount, to the next thing I know, I'm trying cases on the bench. So I tell all of you guys, and over the years I told people, I said, I went from the bucket to the bench. So there's no telling. What I'm trying to tell you is I'm pulling down strongholds, pulling down pillars, pulling down things that would have oppressed me through life. And God gave me more opportunity to learn legal issues and law and how to help a lot of people throughout that job over the years. And I'm telling you, man, I feel like we've been in the Lord's will all these years. There's come times when the budget crisis came. We thought we would be losing a job. Somebody else had more politics than me. Somebody else was more liked than me. But I had to put it to heart and say, hey, either God's with me or he's not. Next thing you know, they passed over. Somebody else left office. Somebody else moved on to a new job. Here I am. Time came for me to transfer. I thought, man, we will never get up to the mountains of North Carolina. My wife loves it. She's put up with all these shifts all these years. I said, how are we going to get up here, Carolyn? I told her, she said, just believe God, see what he can do. She goes up there and says, I'm going to meet with the clerk of court in Surrey County this morning. And I'll let you know how it goes. We've sold our house. We're getting ready to move. I said, I'm going to make sure my wife has it going on because, she wants to live in the mountains. She likes it. I'm going to believe for it. We're talking about getting your hands on something. I said, but what about me? The whole time I'm saying, what about me? What about me? But guys, sometimes you had to put your wife first. And I said, okay, do whatever can work out. She said, Matt, you're not going to believe what happened. Said the clerk of court's a former magistrate. He wants to talk to you, but he's hiring me in the process. So we already had our house up here. And so she was able to move on up in 2022 or 2022, started working. I ended up moving with my mother-in-law and father-in-law. They let me live there. And the guy said, just let me talk to you, Matt. So I went up there and interviewed for the job. They kicked me out, but then it came back around. And this time we got our hands on it. This time we got up here. This time they said, they treated me a whole different way than last time. It's like an angel was in the interview room with me, in the chambers of the judge with me. I can't explain it. And she kept making statements like, if I give you a shot, and if I give you a shot. Well, I knew I probably had the job because they called me at 9:00 at night, and there ain't nobody works for the state 8 to 5 jobs going to call somebody at 9:00 unless they're behind. You know that. I'm talking about God getting you on to get your hands on something. And God knew I wanted to be back with my family. And guys, the rest is history, man. We got the shot, got the appointment. The clerk of court made a speech and put me in office. And they said, hey, man, if you get this appointment in December, or this year and coming up in December, you're in. You know, you can stay, until you're 72 years old if you wish. That's up to you. Why would I want to leave something that I love? So we'll find out what happens. But I mean, I've gone out there and done the best job I can do. And I'm telling you, man, I feel like we've killed Philistines in the process. We've been able to accomplish things for God, and God's got some things for you as well. There's no telling what's going to happen for you. I've seen so many of you come out and get your hands on something and be able to get a job and be able to produce in life. And so I've seen some of you come back to your family or get married or get moving with life. And I don't want to ever see you back in jail again. I want to see you moving ahead with life. And I'm believing not only are you going to have a ministry, I'll have something as well here in this part of the area of Virginia, North Carolina, but I'm believing whatever your area of influence, God's going to use you to hopefully go back and help somebody that's in your situation. But with that said, if you can get your hands on it, you can bring it down. And that's all I want you to remember for today. Look, we'll get back to you about the name later. We'll get back to you about what we can do, but we're going to try to send this out as is now. And if you guys will just be praying for this part of the ministry, this is something I really care about, because I don't want to be going into prisons actively helping new guys in Virginia, and then you guys in North Carolina that knew me get left by the wayside. We want to make sure we keep this going until the Lord takes us out of here, or until, we leave this earth. And some of you are older than me. Your time is shorter than mine. Hopefully by rhyme and reason, we get 70 by reason of strength, 80. Some people live to be 100, but we don't know how much time we have. A lot of you guys have got some age on your life. We want to make your last years the best by giving you the best we can. So if I was you, I'd get involved in a local church, get involved in the gym every day, most days, get involved in some kind of physical activity, and read the scriptures and stay in prayer. You know what to do. We've taught you what to do, and let God make it work for your life. So get your hands on it and pull it down. With that said, if I don't see you here or there, I'll see you in the air. With that said, thanks God. Thank you guys, and have a good week, and we'll see you next time on the podcast. Goodbye.